Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to The Explainer. We are transporting ourselves way back in time to the year 701 BC. Just imagine for a second, you're looking up at a massive, ancient stone wall. There are dramatic shadows cast by the harsh sun, and you suddenly realize the greatest, absolutely most ruthless military superpower on the planet is amassing right outside your gates. Today, we're looking at the terrifying siege of Jerusalem, and we're going to examine an intense clash of ancient worldviews that's been preserved for over 2.5 millennia.
To get to the bottom of this historical event, here's our agenda. We're going to start with the Siege of Judah, then we'll examine the contrasting ancient records side by side, analyze the Rabshakeh's psychological warfare, and explore the challenge to divine authority. Finally, we'll validate these historical perspectives. I am incredibly enthusiastic to cross-examine two distinct ancient perspectives with you today to build a really conclusive, fascinating historical synthesis of what actually happened. All right, Section 1, the Siege of Judah, the March of the Assyrian War Machine.
So you have to understand, the Assyrian Empire wasn't just a large army. No, they were an overwhelming, unstoppable juggernaut that literally brought sheer terror to the ancient Mediterranean world. And King Sennacherib of Assyria, he didn't just march straight to the capital. He systematically dismantled the region's defenses, kind of like a giant puzzle. First, they conquer 46 walled cities in Judah. Then, in month 2, they completely defeat the combined Egyptian and Ethiopian armies at Eltekeh. Only after neutralizing all those external threats and stripping away all defenses do they finally turn their terrifying gaze onto Jerusalem in month 3.
And you know, the biblical account definitely doesn't shy away from the horrific reality of this invasion. Isaiah chapter 36 verse 1 states that in the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Sennacherib came up against all the defense cities of Judah and took them. What's absolutely fascinating here is that both the biblical text and the writings of the ancient historian Josephus completely agree on this devastating initial loss. Judah was effectively crushed, save for its capital.
Moving on to Section 2, Contrasting Ancient Records, the Price of Peace.
Now, what's really interesting here is how history is often spun by those who survive it and those who win it, especially when we're talking about ancient propaganda. According to records from Josephus and the Bible, King Hezekiah sent a massive tribute to Assyria just to try and buy peace, 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. But look at the differing numbers from the opposing perspective. Sennacherib's own Assyrian annals claim he received 800 talents of silver along with the 30 talents of gold. Notice how the gold matches perfectly across both enemy records, but the silver, well, it's highly likely Sennacherib inflated that number to sound even more impressive and victorious to the folks back home in Nineveh.
And speaking of sounding impressive, the Assyrian records are incredibly empirical and just straight up domineering. Just listen to this boast straight from Sennacherib's annals regarding King Hezekiah. He writes, "Himself I made a prisoner in Jerusalem, his royal residence, like a bird in a cage." Notice he doesn't actually claim he breached the walls of Jerusalem here, just that he totally trapped the king inside.
Okay, Section 3, Rabshakeh's psychological warfare, terror at the walls. Once the city was trapped, the actual mechanics of the siege began. The Assyrians sent a high-ranking official, known as the Rabshakeh, to literally stand outside the city walls and shout at the defenders. His first strategy, recorded in Isaiah chapter 36, verse 6, was to break Judean morale by mocking their political alliances. Specifically, their hope that Egypt would swoop in and rescue them. He says, "Lo, thou trustest in the staff of this broken reed, on Egypt, wherein if a man lean, it will go into his hand and pierce it. So is Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to all that trust in him." And the absolute worst part for the people inside Jerusalem, the Rabshakeh wasn't bluffing. Sennacherib's own historical annals actually confirm the Assyrians really had just defeated the Egyptian and Ethiopian forces on the plain of Eltekeh. They literally captured Egyptian charioteers and princes alive, right in the midst of battle. So the Rabshakeh's taunt was perfectly validated by the facts on the ground. Egypt was indeed a broken reed that simply could not save them.
The Judean officials up on the wall were terrified, knowing this would cause absolute panic if the common people heard these facts. According to Isaiah chapter 36, verse 11, they make a desperate plea. "Speak, I pray thee, unto thy servants in the Syrian language, for we understand it, and speak not to us in the Jews' language in the ears of the people that are on the wall." They are literally begging him to speak in Aramaic, the language of diplomacy, so their civilians don't understand the terrifying reality of their situation. But the Assyrians, they wanted them to hear every single word. Isaiah chapter 36, verse 12, shows the Rabshakeh responding with incredibly crude graphic imagery. "Hath my master sent me to thy master and to thee to speak these words? Hath he not sent me to the men that sit upon the wall, that they may eat their own dung and drink their own piss with you?"
Now, this wasn't just vulgarity for the sake of it. This was a highly calculated ancient tactic. The Rabshakeh is forcing the civilians to vividly visualize the gruesome, inevitable reality of starvation during a siege, hoping to induce mass panic and force a surrender from the inside.
Which brings us to Section 4, Challenging Divine Authority, a Clash of Gods.
This immense psychological pressure transitions directly into the ideological climax of the siege, conquering the Judeans' theology. And the absolute audacity of this next tactic is mind-blowing. Isaiah chapter 36, verse 10 states the Rabshakeh looks up and claims, "And am I now come up without the Lord against this land to destroy it? The Lord said unto me, Go up against this land and destroy it." He is actively weaponizing their own faith against them, equating military dominance with divine authorization. And then he drops this devastating rhetorical challenge on the defenders: "Hath any of the gods delivered his land?" I want to pause here for just a second to let the heavy tension of that question really sink in, because if no other nation's God could protect them from the Assyrian war machine, why would yours? He then starts listing the conquered cities as empirical proof. Isaiah chapter 36, verse 19 states his demand: "Where are the gods of Hamath and Arphad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim? And have they delivered Samaria out of my hand?" And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how the Assyrians operated. They systematically used the smoking ruins of their past conquests to erode the present faith of their enemies.
But, the Judean perspective provides a really fascinating counterframe to all this Assyrian arrogance. In Isaiah chapter 10, verse 5, the biblical account actually leans into the Assyrian dominance, referring to them as, "O Assyrian, the rod of mine anger and the staff in their hand is mine indignation." It paradoxically views this arrogant, world-conquering army as nothing more than a tool, literally a rod, held in the hand of the Lord to dispense judgment.
Okay, let's move to Section 5, Validating Historical Perspectives, and see how this builds into synthesizing the data.
We've seen the raw terror, the political propaganda, and the deep theological clashes. So, the crucial point is that when you lay these sources side by side, despite the differing silver counts and the entirely opposing spiritual framing, these texts remarkably validate the core historical facts of the siege. Look at how these line up. Both agree Assyria conquered the fortified cities. Both agree Hezekiah was trapped in Jerusalem. Both agree a massive tribute was paid, and that Egypt totally failed to help. And perhaps most importantly, neither text claims Jerusalem actually fell. The Bible claims divine intervention, while Sennacherib conveniently omits any mention of capturing the city, covering his failure by simply bragging that he kept Hezekiah locked up like a bird.
Which leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative thought. How does combining two opposing pieces of ancient propaganda give us a richer, more accurate picture of history than either text could on its own? By critically examining both the sheer arrogance of the Assyrian annals and the steadfast faith within the biblical text, we are left with a truly fascinating multidimensional historical reality. I hope this explainer has equipped you with a deeper understanding of this ancient conflict and sparked your curiosity to learn even more about how history is shaped by the voices of the past. Keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.